Join us as we welcome the esteemed educator and motivational speaker, Dr. Annette Moultrie.
Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to walk through how to write Chapter 4 of your research. Now, Chapter 4 is where you finally get to show what you found after all your hard work collecting data. Think of Chapter 4 like telling a story. It is like a news report, but with facts, with statistics, with quotes, with graphs and insight. Chapter 4 is where you say, here's what I saw, what people told me, what the numbers said, and what I learned from documents and reports. We will start with qualitative findings, then move into quantitative, and show how they come together if you use mixed methods. Okay, let's begin. In your introduction, you're going to start with a short paragraph. You're going to restate what your study is about. You're going to restate your research method. Is it mixed method, qualitative? If it is qualitative, state if it's a case study or another area of qualitative research. Also, say what methods you use. Did you conduct interviews? Did you conduct surveys? Did you use archival reports? Case studies? You have to mention that in your introduction. Here's an example of a sentence that was used in the introduction of a study. This study examined how small accounting firms detect fraud. Using interviews, surveys, and financial reports, I explored common strategies and tools used in practice. So if you notice, this sentence will probably give you a hint that this report or this research is on fraud detection. Also, in Chapter 4, you can use pronouns. You can use I or we if you're working with someone with your research. Remember, your introduction should be simple, it should be clear, and also please cite your method. But before I get into the other sections of Chapter 4, I want to explain to you construct validity, internal validity, and external validity, because it's very important that you have this information in your research. So what is construct validity? Construct validity assesses whether a measurement tool such as a survey or financial ratio or disclosure index accurately represents the theoretical concept it claims to measure. So why is it important in accounting research? Now, many accounting concepts like earnings, quality, corporate governance, audit risk, they are abstract and cannot be directly observed. So researchers must use proxies such as discretionary accruals for earnings quality, board independence for governance. So if these proxies don't truly capture the concept, the study's conclusions may be flawed. One thing to consider about construct validity, there are threats to construct validity. One is poor operationalization. That is when you're using an inappropriate measure, using number of audit committee meetings as a proxy for audit quality. when meetings could be superficial. The other threat is oversimplification. That's when you're reducing a complex concept such as financial transparency to a single metric, for example, number of disclosures. Another threat is measurement error. That's data inaccuracies such as miscoded financial statements. These are just a few of the threats to construct validity. So it actually depends on your study. But construct validity is definitely one that you should include in your research. Internal validity. Internal validity examines whether changes in the dependent variable are truly caused by the independent variable and not by other confounding factors. By this definition, you would know that you will definitely have this information in your mixed method research or quantitative research. There are threats to internal validity. One is selection bias. That's where you're studying only large firms when small firms behave differently. Another one is history effects. That's external events such as a recession that could actually affect your results. Another threat is maturation. That is when natural changes over time. That's natural changes over time, like firms improving governance unrelated to your study. Another threat is regression to the mean. That is extreme performers. For example, fraud-prone firms naturally reverting to average. So what should you consider for internal validity? The question that you should ask, one of the questions that you should ask for internal validity is, can I trust this cause and effect? Or can I confidently say that X causes Y without other factors interfering? External validity. External validity assesses whether findings from a study can be generalized to other settings, populations, or even time periods. And why does it matter in accounting research? Well, accounting research often aims to inform policies, regulations, and business practices. So if results are only applicable to a narrow sample, for example, U.S. Fortune 500 firms, they may not help regulators or global firms. And of course, there are external threats to external validity. One is non-representative samples. That's where you're studying only public firms when most businesses are private. The other is artificial settings. Lab experiments that don't reflect real-world auditor behavior. Another threat is time-bound effects. For example, post-2008 financial crisis data may not apply in stable economies. So what should you consider for external validity? Is for you to answer this question, one of the questions for your research. Does this work elsewhere or just in my study? That's one of the questions that you should ask. Another question that you should ask is, does your findings apply to other settings? Does it apply to other firms or time periods? These are some of the things that you should consider in external validity. Okay, let's move on to data collection process. In the data collection process, you would want to summarize your data sources and how they were collected. Summarize your data sources and how they were collected. In qualitative research, you want to tell your readers who you talked to, why you chose them, how you recorded it. Did you write notes? Did you use audio? And how you kept it safe. An example of a sentence that was used in a qualitative research: I interviewed 12 auditors from regional firms. Each interview lasted 30 minutes and was audio recorded and transcribed. Participants were selected based on their experience with fraud detection. So you see with this sentence, it does actually answer those questions that I talked about. Who you talked to, why you chose them, how you recorded it. Okay, let's move on to quantitative data collection. What if you use quantitative data, or surveys? What type of survey? Did you use a questionnaire? How many people answered? How many people answered your survey, your questionnaire? How did you analyze it? Here's an example of a census that was used in a study. A survey was sent to 100 accountants. 85 responded. Responses were stored in Excel and later imported into SPSS. So you could tell that this sentence actually answered those three questions. Let's move on to archival data collection. So if you use archival data, it would actually be what? Past reports or statements, right? So with archival data collection, you want to explain data sources like SEC filings and your retrieval steps. What documents did you review? How far did you go back? The next step is data analysis approach. You're going to explain why certain methods were used for each data type. That's in the data analysis approach section. So for quantitative analysis, use descriptive statistics or regression or other statistical tools. Mention the tools such as SPSS. Whatever tools that you use for your quantitative research, you have to provide that information, provide the details. Okay? All right, with the qualitative analysis, use coding and thematic analysis with NV Vivo or MaxQDA. And I know some of this terms may not even ring a bell, but I'm pretty sure with your research, qualitative research, most students actually use either case studies or archival information or archival data. So in giving a qualitative analysis, you should tell your readers how you made sense of the interview words. And I know because of the time constraint, most of the qualitative research, students did not conduct interviews. Most use case studies and secondary source data or archival data. But even with this, you want to think like this. You're going to highlight sentences. You're going to group similar ideas, then call them themes, okay? For example, interviews were transcribed and coded using NV Bible. That's what I like to say it. You mentioned the number of themes in your qualitative research, okay? So with the archival analysis, you want to use content or financial ratio analysis. This is just one example or two examples, okay? But with archival analysis, you would tell us how you look through those documents. Maybe you counted how often certain terms appeared, or did you calculate ratios? For example, here's a sentence that was used in this study. A content analysis was conducted on 25 annual reports to identify language related to audit risk. Mixed method integration. You want to describe triangulation across data types. So in other words, you want to let your readers know what statistics did you run? What was the software? Who actually created the software? Did you use SPS? Did you use descriptive statistics? Did you use inferential statistics? So you want to give all that information in that area of your research. Findings overview. So you want to structure your findings by themes or research questions and hypotheses. Okay? So let's break it down by what you found. Let's move to qualitative findings. For the qualitative findings, you want to use headings for each theme. Okay, then if you use quotes, please make sure you cite them correctly. Okay, please make sure you cite them correctly. For example, you could use a theme, ethical challenges. Okay. Here with ethical challenges, here's a sentence that's used as an example for interviews. Many auditors felt pressure from clients. Maybe a participant mentioned that during the interview. But then again, you will not have that information because none of you conducted interviews. But in your qualitative research, and if you're using case studies and you're using archival data in those articles, in those research, they may mention what the participants stated during the researchers interview for that particular research. So in other words, it's not something that you will actually say because you did not conduct the interview. But if you're using case studies and other archival secondary sources, whereas the participant stated that information, then yes, you can go ahead and put that information there. But always remember, you have to cite. If you have to cite, and if it's a quote, please cite it correctly. For quantitative data findings, you will definitely probably have tables, you have charts, you'll have bars, you have figures. Even in qualitative, going back to qualitative, you could have figures in qualitative. But definitely you will have some figures, bars, bar graphs, tables, and probably charts in quantitative findings. Okay? You want to make sure that you have that information there. Please make sure you use footers and also headers for your figures, bars, graphs, tables, and/or charts. Archival findings. You're going to show trends or changes across reports and documents. Maybe you're going to use a graph showing net income dips. Maybe you will use tables or bar graphs. So you could show trends there. For example, in this particular study, here they have Walmart had revenue drops in 2020 and 2021, which align with interview findings on financial strain. That's just an example. All right, so mixed method findings. You're going to show where data agree or differ, okay? That's convergence or divergence. You're going to show where data agree or differ. So you're putting it all together like a puzzle, okay? Interpretation of findings. You're going to connect your results to conceptual framework or theories. Practical implications. You're going to explain relevance to accounting policies and practice. All right, so here you're now ready, or you should be ready to answer the big question. You should be ready to answer the big question to your research, okay? What does all this mean? What does it all mean? Okay? You're going to tie your results back to your research questions. You're going to tie your results back to your theories if you have them. You're going to tie your results back to your hypotheses. Okay? You should answer all your research questions and hypotheses in Chapter 4. Also, you should be able to answer these questions. 1, did your findings agree with other research? 2, anything new that we should know about? Is there anything that surprised you while you were conducting your research? And 3, what can you learn? And also, what can we learn from all of your findings? All right, so now we're at the summary of your Chapter 4. That's where you're going to wrap it up. You're going to highlight your main findings, and you're going to remind your reader what you discovered. And now, also in this area, you're going to transition to Chapter 5. You're going to transition to Chapter 5, and you're almost there. So you're going to make sure that you have some sentences to transition to Chapter 5. That's your discussion and your conclusion, okay? Here's an example of a sentence that was used in a study on fraud detection. This chapter presented the findings from interviews, which you will not have, surveys, and archival documents. Results highlighted challenges in fraud detection consistent with the fraud triangle. The next chapter will explore, or you can say Chapter 5 will explore the meaning of these findings and offer recommendations for practice. So that would be your example of transitioning to Chapter 5, which is your last chapter. So, until next time, I will see you later. I wish you the best. Thank you.